My name is Jacob, and until recently my life was quite ordinary. Work, home, family, everything was going on as usual. But my main passion has always been books. I could spend hours in bookstores and libraries, searching for rare editions and immersing myself in captivating stories. One day I saw an ad for a sale of old books at our local library. They were making room for new arrivals and decided to get rid of part of their collection. For me, it was a unique opportunity to add to my home library and possibly find some real treasures. I immediately thought of Linda, my mother-in-law. She shared my love of books and was always happy to talk about literature. Despite the fact that we were connected through my wife, we had developed a warm and friendly relationship. I decided to invite her to join me on this book hunt. "Linda, have you heard about the sale at the library?" I asked when we met at a family dinner. "Yes, I saw the ad. It sounds very tempting," she replied with a twinkle in her eye. "What do you say? Would you like to keep me company? Together we can find more interesting specimens." "I'd love to, Jacob. Let's meet at the library entrance on the day of the sale." "Great idea. It's a deal." We arranged to meet, and I eagerly waited for the appointed day. The anticipation of searching for book treasures stirred my imagination, but then I could not even imagine where this seemingly innocent idea would lead. On the day of the sale, I arrived at the library half an hour before opening. Linda was already waiting for me at the entrance, holding a thermos of hot coffee and a box for books. Her eyes shone with enthusiasm as she waved to me. "Good morning, Jacob. Well, are you ready for the book hunt?" she asked cheerfully. "You bet. I couldn't sleep all night with anticipation," I replied, coming closer. Linda handed me a cup of fragrant coffee. We stood side by side, sipping the hot drink and discussing what books we hoped to find. Other book lovers gradually gathered around us, waiting for the doors to open. At exactly 10 a.m., the librarian let us in. Linda and I looked at each other and, without saying a word, rushed to the shelves of old books. The real treasure hunt began. We methodically scanned each shelf, studying the spines and covers. "Look, Jacob, this is the first edition of The Great Gatsby," Linda exclaimed, carefully taking out a battered book. "Wow, what a find," I admired. "And I've dug up a rare collection of Whitman's poems here." We showed each other our trophies, sharing the delight of each unique find. Time flew by unnoticed, and soon we discovered that our boxes were filled to the brim, and the sale was coming to an end. Tired but happy, we went to the checkout to pay for our purchases. Looking at the impressive stack of books, Linda suddenly suggested, "Jacob, why don't we continue our book celebration? Come to my house, have some tea, and admire our new treasures." I gladly agreed. Our shared passion brought us closer, and I didn't want to part so quickly. We agreed to meet in an hour at Linda's house, anticipating the continuation of this special day. Entering Linda's house, I immediately felt the coziness and warmth. There were books everywhere, on shelves, tables, even stacked on the floor. It was a true haven for a book lover. "Welcome to my humble abode," Linda smiled, leading me into the living room. "Make yourself at home." We laid out our new acquisitions on the coffee table and began to examine them, sipping fragrant tea. Each book was unique, with its own history and character. Gradually, our conversation turned to more personal topics. We shared memories of favorite books, of how they had influenced our lives and worldview. I told Linda about my dream to someday write my own book, and she confessed that in her youth she had dreamed of becoming a librarian. Word by word, we opened up to each other more and more. It turned out that we had much more in common than just a love of literature. We laughed at funny stories, grieved over sad moments, and found solace in the wise quotes of beloved authors. We didn't notice how dusk fell outside the window. Linda turned on a cozy floor lamp, and the room was filled with soft light. We sat side by side on the couch, and our hands accidentally touched as we reached for the same book. That touch seemed to spark something. I looked into Linda's eyes and saw a reflection of my own feelings: excitement, tenderness, desire. Slowly, as if afraid to scare away the moment, we reached for each other and merged in a kiss. The whole world ceased to exist. There was only us and the books and this magic that had arisen between us. We caressed each other, exploring like uncharted pages. Our bodies intertwined in an ancient dance of passion, and our moans were drowned out by the rustling of book pages. I knew it was wrong. I knew, but I couldn't stop. Linda was my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, but right now she was just a woman who had awakened something long forgotten and desirable in me. We made love right there, among the books that had led us to this moment. And then we lay in each other's arms, afraid to disturb the fragile balance. But reality relentlessly invaded our idyll. What have we done? What should we do now? These questions swarmed in my head, finding no answer. In the morning, I woke up in my bed next to my wife. The events of yesterday seemed like a dream, but I knew that everything was real. A reality that threatened to destroy my life. All day I walked around like a stranger, immersed in painful thoughts. How to look my wife in the eye, how to behave with Linda. Guilt and shame were gnawing at me from the inside. In the evening, Linda and I met to discuss what had happened. We sat on a bench in the park, not daring to speak first. Finally, Linda broke the silence. "Jacob, what happened? We shouldn't have done that. I feel terrible." "I know, Linda. Me too. But what do we do now?" I asked, looking into her eyes. "We have to stop this. For the sake of our families, for the sake of your wife, my daughter. It was a mistake." Linda's words cut into my heart, but I understood that she was right. We could not allow ourselves to destroy everything that we had built over the years. But how to forget those feelings, that attraction that arose between us? "You're right, Linda. We need to keep this a secret and try to move on. But I don't know if I can forget." "We have to, Jacob. We have to try, for all our sakes." We hugged goodbye, putting all the pain and tenderness that overwhelmed us into that gesture. And then we went our separate ways, carrying the secret that would henceforth bind us with invisible threads. Days went on as usual, but everything had changed. I tried to avoid Linda, afraid that her presence alone would be enough to destroy my resolve. At family gatherings, we barely exchanged a couple of phrases, afraid to give ourselves away. But at night, alone with my thoughts, I returned again and again to that day, to our conversations, touches, kisses. And then I realized that this connection had not disappeared. It lurked somewhere in the depths, waiting for its hour. I prayed that I would have the strength to stay away from Linda, that our secret would remain buried in the past. But some part of me longed to experience that passion, that unity of souls again. And this inner struggle tore me apart. Weeks passed, but my inner turmoil only grew. I tried with all my might to be a good husband, to spend more time with my wife, but my thoughts kept returning to Linda. One day, when I stayed late at work, my wife Sarah called me with an unexpected request. "Jacob, could you stop by my mom's and pick up some documents from her? She's a bit under the weather today and can't bring them herself." Everything inside me went cold. To meet Linda alone in her house, after everything that had happened between us? It seemed unthinkable, but I couldn't refuse without arousing suspicion either. "Of course, honey," I forced out. "I'll stop by on my way home." The whole way to Linda's house, I was restless. My heart was pounding like crazy. My palms were sweating. I feared this meeting, but some part of me anticipated it with a secret thrill. Linda opened the door, pale and haggard. We looked at each other in silence, not knowing what to say. Finally, she stepped aside, letting me into the house. I entered the living room and froze. On the coffee table lay the very book we had been reading on the day of our intimacy. The memories came flooding back with renewed force, and I felt a familiar flame ignite in my chest. "Why are you doing this, Linda?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We had an agreement." "I miss you, Jacob," she interrupted, and tears glistened in her eyes. "I tried to forget, but I can't. I can't stop thinking about that day, about us. Linda, please, we can't. It's wrong." "And what's right? Living a lie? Denying our feelings? I'm tired of pretending, Jacob." She came right up to me and put her hands on my chest. A shiver ran through my body at her touch. I wanted to push her away, to leave, but I couldn't. Instead, I hugged her and held her close, inhaling the familiar scent. Our lips met in a passionate, desperate kiss. We clung to each other like drowning people, afraid that this moment would simply disappear. But our solitude was suddenly interrupted by the sound of the door opening. We pulled away from each other, but it was too late. Sarah, my wife, stood on the threshold with a look of shock and pain on her face. "What the hell is going on here?" she asked in a trembling voice. I opened my mouth, trying to find the words, but what could I say? All excuses sounded pathetic and unconvincing. Linda stood beside me, pale and stunned. Sarah, I began, but she didn't let me finish. How could you, Jacob? With my own mother! How long has this been going on between you? Her voice broke into a scream. It's not what you think, baby. Linda tried to intervene, but Sarah wasn't listening. Don't you dare call me baby! You're no longer my mother, and you… She turned to me, and rage flared in her eyes. I don't even want to see you! Get out of our house! I stood there, shocked, not knowing what to do. My life was falling apart right before my eyes, and I was powerless to stop it. Sarah turned around and walked out, slamming the door. An oppressive silence hung in the room. My God, Jacob, what have we done? Linda whispered, covering her face with her hands. I didn't know what to say. It had all happened so quickly, so terribly. Was our momentary weakness worth this? Worth the family, the trust, everything I had built over the years? I left Linda's house in a daze. The world around me seemed alien and hostile. Where to go? What to do next? I couldn't imagine my life without Sarah, without the familiar routine. But I couldn't give up my feelings for Linda either. The following days turned into hell. Sarah filed for divorce, not even wanting to talk to me. I moved into a hotel, feeling empty and lost. Linda called me, tried to support me, but her voice only intensified my pain. Our secret was out, but it didn't make things any easier. We both carried the burden of guilt and the consequences of our choice. I didn't know how to live on, how to atone for my mistake. Could I hope for forgiveness? And was my feeling for Linda true love or just a flash of forbidden passion? I stood at a crossroads, and each road led to uncertainty. I had to decide, but any choice seemed unbearable. My story had no happy ending, only bitterness and regret, and I didn't know if I would have the strength to walk this path to the end. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.